Right, you should now hopefully have your wood chiseled out like this. What I recommend at this point is getting your nut, putting it in place and seeing if it would spin round without catching anywhere. Well, I think mine's a little bit tight here. Right, hang on, see there, it's actually touching, and there it gets caught. So I'm going to need to take a little bit more out of there, and then remember to try it on the other side. Make sure the nut's the right way around, and then see if it'll do it on that side as well. Might be better that side for me. Yeah, I reckon it'll be fine that side. And then check the trigger as well. The only place the trigger probably will need adjusting is possibly there and at the back there. But at the minute it looks fine. I'm just looking for mine now. I'll have to use this one. Yeah, that'll. Yeah, try the other side. I'm going to need to take that bit off there by the looks of it. Yeah, so take those bits off, just adjust it so it works perfectly, and then we'll sandwich it together and see if it needs any more took out of the inside. Right, once you've just got them bits took off, just sand off any rough bits inside, and then we'll sandwich all three pieces together and check that the nut and trigger move okay. So just do a rough sanding inside for now, just to get rid of any lumps and bumps, and then put the three pieces together and come back. Just before we do put them together, if you haven't got a vise, screw them together. If you have got a vise, just stick it in the vise, it'll be quicker that way. Right, we're just going to give it a quick little test, see if yeah, see my nut will fit in there perfectly. You want a bit of a gap, so we can stick a washer down the side. It may get a bit tighter with the screws, but as far as I'm aware, this should be fine for me. Just stick the old trigger in. Trigger fits in fine, as you can see there. Trigger seems to fit in fine, so at this point I'd say that's oh, I don't know. Right, I've decided we're not going to have that little bit in the middle, this bit, so that can be chopped now. I think what we'll do next is cut the pins for the trigger and nut, and then we're going to put on both of the outside bits of aluminium. So the first thing to do, once you're 100% sure that your trigger and nut fit in that groove fine, is screw the wood together. Screw the three pieces of wood back together how it's going to be. Right, do that now. Right, next job is get your trigger and nut, place them in. Remember, the top of the nut is always this. If you look at the nut, one part that's like a 90-degree cut. This one isn't, this is slightly curved. This is where the string goes, this is the top. So place that in, place your trigger in like this, up and in, so you find the hole. Get your nails, whatever you're going to use as pins, cut off the tip, place it in, mark it off so that the pin is the same thickness as the wood, so it'll be flush down, flush on the other side. And do that for both the trigger and the nut. Right, we'll come back next, and then we'll go on to doing the front plate, the side plates, the two side plates. Right, so this is what you're looking for, and then that goes in the hole, and then put it right in, obviously. There you go, like that, both sides. It's flush. and then see the plate we put on afterwards holds those in and strengthens up the side. So that's your trigger one. Do it for the nut and then come back, and then we'll start on the outer plates. Right, so this is where you should be now. At this point you can test to see if the nut spins. Actually mine's not quite spinning right at the minute. That's good enough. We'll sort that out later. At this point we can go on to the side plates anyway. That's all just the fine adjustments later, because we're still going to have to sand this nut down a bit more anyway, because you can see it's very rough. It won't run smoothly yet. This is why we always make sure we can take it apart, because it means at a later date we can adjust everything very easily. Right, you're going to want the 2 side plates now, and then get your 2 side aluminium plates, and I'll show you how to mark those. Right, so to mark this metal, all you really need to do is, actually here, but the metal is going to be all the way along and somewhere here. So I suppose you could either, because the problem is our template's cut up now, isn't it? Right, do this. Get your piece of metal. Mine's got a hole on it, so I'm going to have to put it at the bottom edge. So make sure it goes up to here and the bottom edge. And then what you could do, cut that part out. Oh, hang on. Just check when that's on, that'll be covering up that pin, which it will. The metal will go to there, and it will be far enough past the cutout to make it give it strength. So put your metal along the edge there, up to the tip, along the bottom, and then lay your paper on, mark that angle, and then what you can do, once you've marked that angle, I can't do it with one hand, mark that angle, and then put the piece of metal underneath. Right, we'll come back to that in a minute and I'll show you. Right, there's my mark. So, now put it underneath, put it in the same position as it was, so against the bottom edge and there. And now draw along the top and there, and there, and there. Don't mark that little cutout, because what we're gonna hide that cutout so that the bolt for the prod is inside. So do not mark that bit. So just mark down there, straight down there, all the way along the top. And this part, you might have to take the trigger out to mark that properly. And then you should have that one side. And then once you cut that out, you could probably use that to mark the other side. Right, so as you can see then, this is where you'd cut. You'd cut along there, up there, along there, all the way across, all the way along. Ignore that bump there, that's just where the trigger nut was. Go along, cut down there and down there. There's a trick to cutting aluminium. If you put it in a vise, you can actually cut it. What you can do, you can score it with a Stanley knife and then just snap it off. You may have to cut this part because it's an inside curve, but any straight lines, I'll try and show you myself doing that so you get an idea of how to do it. But before I do that, actually, remember to, I don't know what would be easier, mark them both at the same, like now you've done this one, turn the stock over and do the metal for the other side as well. So then you've got your 2 bits. Once you've got your 2 bits, I'll show you how to cut it, or how I cut it anyway. There's lots of ways to do it. Right, I don't know how well this is going to show up. What you want to do, you want to clamp your aluminium with the straight line across some kind of straight edge that you can score along with a knife. A very sharp Stanley knife. And keep scoring across. Got to go quite deep. And then I think that should be enough. Turn it over. Put the piece of wood back along where the edge is. And there's your piece of aluminium cut without using a saw. And you could do the same for that straight edge, there. The only thing you're going to need a little bit of a saw for is just to do the inside curves. Right, finish cutting all your bits of metal out and then come back. Right, that's your 2 outer parts done. I think what we should do now, before we put these on, is do everything inside the stock now, because once we put those on we don't really want to keep taking them off. So things to do now are make sure this groove's running perfectly. We're then going to have to do the I can't remember what to call it, the prod nut, and then we'll do the spring for the trigger. So I think the first thing we'll do is make sure that's running perfectly, so you can do that yourselves. Just make sure that's all running smoothly. Mine isn't quite yet. So take it apart, make sure it all runs smoothly, nothing's catching. Yours may already be fine. And then we'll do the spring for the trigger. Right, I'll show you how to do the trigger next. After I've done what I've got to do, I'll come back.